can say make our circumstances harmful. We can make our circumstances helpful as well. We have therefore we are swatantra karta. Of course, quite often we become niyojya karta. We become uh, say such agent who are dependent upon others and being guided by others, being you can say told by others what to do and what not to do. Mm. We have, in fact, saying that Shruteha Vivinna, Smatya Vivinna, what is that? Neko Rishi Yasya Matam Pramanam Dharmasya Tattvam Nitam Guhayam Mahajano Yena Gata Sabanta. So we have to follow. Of course, Guru is there. Guru, in fact, Guru is one. We generally say Guru should not be Ghanta Guru. Guru is one who is really a virtuous person, one who has that sort of radiance which enlightens all this surrounding. And it is only such a guru which is very difficult to find, but such gurus have been there in our tradition. They were there all over the world also. So, but we are quite fortunate having a galaxy of such gurus, and they are, say, as the Taittiriya Upanishad, the Shikshavali says, they are Ayukta, Aluksha, Dharmakama, etc., etc. Some qualifications are there for a guru. So we have to discern who is a guru and who is not a guru, and follow only that guru who is really, in fact, working for lokahita. Vasantavat lokahite charantah. Shankaracharya in the Chudamani says. So, a guru should be in the form of acharya, acharvad. Guru should be himself or herself virtuous, then only can make others virtuous. So, I would therefore say that in that what we call as a Kali Yuga, we are not in a very happy situation. We are not happy ourselves. We are not happy with our surroundings. And we therefore always try to pursue that which is harmful. Ultimately, initially it may appear to be good and attractive, and that's why we say hiranyamayena patrena satyasya. Gold is always attractive, and therefore it dazzles our eyes and makes us foolish. Therefore, we should always care for the truth, because truth, in fact, is to see the reality as it is. Yad vishe buddhir na vyabhacharati tat satyam. So, to see the reality as it is, and reality is universal. It is holistic. It is impartite. And holistic means there is unity in diversity, and there is diversity in unity. The cosmic process is at once both one resulting into many, many springing from one, and ultimately culminating in one only. So, Tajjalana, this is what Upanishads say. That sort of understanding is the real understanding of the nature of reality. So, we should know what we are. We should know what is our place in the cosmic setup, and we should also therefore know as to what role we have to perform. If we do that, then definitely this Kali Yuga will not be dark one. It will definitely be a bright one. Now, coming to Hinduism. Hinduism is not, in fact, an ism. It's not a theory. It's a way of life. And this is how Supreme Court in one of its judgments said that Hinduism a way of life. Whosoever follows some basic principles, some tenets, which we call as Hinduism, well, is a Hindu. Well, it's not based on birth. It's not based on some sort of cult. It is something which is a life worthy of living. So, an enlightened life. We call it as Arya. Arya does not mean say, belonging to a particular race. Arya means having a virtuous life which is holistic, which is universalistic, which always wills the good and acts as per the goodness. So, this sort of set of virtues constitute Hinduism. Unfortunately, we are not aware of those sets of virtues. We do not know what those virtues are, how they are to be realized and practiced, and therefore, by name we are Hindus, but by our behavior, we may not be Hindu. Let us therefore be Hindu. And to be Hindu, this should not belong to any particular cult. A Christian can be a Hindu, a Muslim can be a Hindu. Whosoever follows those sets of principles is a Hindu. So we can have this broad-based understanding of Hinduism. I think Hinduism comprises such basic elements. Say, for example, Maitri, universal friendship; Karuna, universal compassion; Mudita, rejoicing in the well-being of others; Upeksha, not to have the equanimity of mind and not to make a distinction between mine and thine. We have that generally this slogan, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So these such sets of principles are there. Well, some vadadvam, some gachatvam, some wo manansi janatam. We can call out such a sets of principles which constitute Hinduism, and these are something which are universalizable. They are not something to be narrowed down to this cult or that particular cult. And therefore, we should make a distinction between religion and a cult. Generally, we mix up the two, and a cult is regarded as religion. But religion is something which is altogether different, and therefore, uh, in the name of Hinduism, therefore, we have distorted it, we have misunderstood it, and because of that, we have suffered also quite a lot. What is needed is that Hinduism should be put in its proper perspective as a set of virtues, and those virtues are not just pertaining to any material pursuits. We, as I refer to the three Upanishads, Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya, all these are the dimensions, are aspects of our existence as a human being, and therefore we have to cater to the needs of all the four, and the practice virtues or values pertaining to all these four or five dimensions, and therefore this Kali Yuga is to be made best use of in having right knowledge and right mode of living based on that right knowledge. Well, all in traditions in Indian culture have emphasized this thing that we must have samyak gyan. This idea of samyak is the core of Hinduism, right understanding of the nature of reality and samyak charitra, right mode of conduct, and therefore through education we have to cultivate. This is the need of the times. Proper type of education. Education, not merely informative, as I said, it should be transformative education. It should transform our life so that from animality we come to humanity, and from humanity we pass on to divinity. Divinity is not something to be realized in the seventh heaven. It is to be realized on this earth itself. We have to therefore cultivate a virtuous life, and a life in which you find that there is paratma samata, feeling of sameness with others, and this paratma samata leading to paratma parivartana, transforming oneself as others. This is the moksha. Moksha is freedom from all narrowness, freedom from all imperfections, freedom from all vices, freedom from ignorance, which is the root cause. So this is what should be understood as moksha. It is moksha means mukti, to be free from. So free from what? Free from all sorts of ignorance, vices, etc. That should be the so. Hinduism is a moksha-oriented dharma, and in this moksha-oriented dharma, as among the purusharthas, we say dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So it is dharma which leads to refinement of artha and kama. Earth should not be in the form of an earth. The kama should not be in the form of kamachara. So both are to be regulated by dharma, and if they are regulated by dharma, naturally they will lead to moksha, which means freedom from all imperfections. Moksha means, in fact, perfection, purnata. From purnata we have come, and to purnata we have to go back. This is the Upanishadic say, saying, and therefore we find that the topic that we have chosen for our deliberation is very much relevant. We first of all should revisit Hinduism, reinterpret Hinduism as not a culture but as a dharma, which is a dharaka, niyamaka, and sadhaka, and therefore invite all to follow this path of dharma. And instead of saying that Hinduism is a cult, we should broaden its nature and our understanding of it. If we do that, then definitely this Kali Yuga will be a bright Yuga and not a dark one. So, but the first thing we should always uh, concentrate on is sa vidyaya vimuktaye. If we want to have mukti, if we want to have moksha as samambonam of our life, then say we must have right knowledge, vidya, and that vidya must be therefore something which is illuminating, something which is enlightening, something which is transforming. And in this transformation, always there has to be totality. You can't have a piecemeal transformation. It should be transformation of the whole society, whole cosmos. It is always the cosmos is impartite. You cannot, of course, artificially we divide it. Yeah, artificially we also, time is eternal, but we have this mathematical time in terms of seconds and minutes and hours and days. And like this, we may have different sorts of classification of time, but time is in fact not to be classified. It cannot be inherently classified. Likewise, this cosmos also is a whole, and it cannot be partitioned. Say space, for example, we do talk of Indian space and Pakistani space, but space is space. It is ananta, and it cannot be say bifurcated or divided into multiple say, forms. Likewise, therefore, cosmos is a whole. Let us have this sort of a holistic approach, which is in fact the Vedic approach. Vedas always talked of the cosmos as one, Bhavatu Vishwa Eka Needam. This analogy of a need is highly symbolic and significant. In a need, see, it is constructed by he bird and she bird, the couple, with great skill and enterprise. And there they have young ones. The young ones, they coexist. They don't quarrel. If when they are hungry, they do cry. It is natural, but they don't quarrel. And the parents also feed them one by one in a definite order, no discrimination, no deprivation. Well, so this analogy of need bhavatu vishwa ek needam is highly significant, and it is given to us in our tradition. And therefore, let's go back to our tradition, and we should attend to all that is true, good, and beautiful. This is what should be meant as transforming Hinduism. So let us therefore put Hinduism in its proper perspective for universal wellness. So always we say, Sarve bhavantu sukhina, Sarve santu niramaya, Sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kashit dukbhat bhavitra. And I want more to Soti.
So, thank you, Professor Bhatt. Thank you, Professor Bhatt. So, in your keynote, you have brought into light the fundamental premises of our Sanatana Dharma, our Hinduism. You have defined in a very scientific way, and you also noted that man has the unbound capacity to evolve. So this unbound capacity to evolve is to be guided properly. Then we can achieve a righteous life. How to guide this latent inner faculties and capacities of man to evolve? There comes the relevance of a realized guru, because we don't know how to evolve. The first standard, second standard, everywhere we need proper guidance. In the absence of guidance, we can be guided to wrong ways also. Therefore, as you rightly said, in choosing a guru, it is more important for our enhancement and evolution. So you have rightly put the conference into the right stream, and thank you, Bhatt, for your enriched presentation. And next we have Sri Dharmanarayan ji, and by the way, we have H.H. Jagadguru Dilip ji Maharaj from USA. He is in New York, but still in New York now time would be 1 o'clock, around 1 o'clock, midnight 1 o'clock. But still he is with us. He is with us, and he is, and I think I think he will forgive us and wait a little more. We have Dharmanarayanji and Professor R.C. Sinha next. May I invite Sri Dharmanarayanji to make his presentation? I don't know if because he is such a very, very busy person and we made him to wait. I request Sri Dharmanarayanji to make your presentation.
Is he listening?
I think Dharmanarayanji is not online. I feel like that. Dharmanarayanji, are you online? Because he's such an important person.
Yes.
No.
Wait.
So Dharmanarayanji,
It seems that he is not
I
reachable.
hope he will join us later. Hello? He will join us later, right? So may I invite Professor R.C. Sinha, ICPR chairman, to make his presentation as the chief guest of the day.
I offer my namaskar, pranam to each and everybody. Respected Professor S.R. Bhatt, I'm thankful to Professor Dr. Gopinath Pillai for inviting me to participate in this serious deliberation on the relevance of Yuga Dharma. I heard most of the lectures, the inaugural address by Soma Bandyopadhyay, and I heard very patiently to Swamiji. And actually, I understood it a little bit by his delivery or a lecture. I find my friend Professor Paneer Selvam, Professor Ganak Bhai Dave, Professor Patel, and some of the Professor Srikala Nair might have left. So I remember few names. I offer my namaskar to them. I heard very recently to Dr. Professor Bhatt, and he has given a very exhaustive treatment of the problem. I will be brief, certainly, because it will be better to listen Swamiji. So, how the Indians, how Hindus have contemplated about yugas. Certainly, it is a cycle. We have got 4 cycles or yuga: Satyug, Treta, Dwapar, and Kali Yuga. In Satyug, we have got all righteousness, all the good things. There was no sin as contemplated by our rishis. Satyug, uh, it was a unique that nobody was sinner in Satyug. But when it came to Treta Yug, so 75% people were righteous and 25% or one third were sinners, or they were prone to sin. I cannot say that they were sinners, prone to sin. And in Dwapar, we, we have got 50% righteous people and 50% sinner people are prone to sin. And in the Kali Yuga, we find that everything is in chaos. In this Kali Yuga, everything in chaos, and certainly we are facing this coronavirus, where man is afraid. So coronavirus is one of the symptoms of the Kali Yuga, in which humanity is suffering a lot. Humanity is undergoing. Humanity is not very much dharmic or righteous. Most of the people, I cannot say all the people, but most of the peoples, they suffer, and in one way or the other, they are sinners. The sin has got a wide meaning. It is not a sort of crime, but we can say it is evil. The coronavirus is also a sort of expression of the sin. So these are the classification of yoga. What is the meaning of the Yuga Dharma? The central question, and why Yuga Dharma is relevant. So certainly we have got Sanatan Dharma. I will make a distinction between Sanatan Dharma and Yuga Dharma, as it has been done by Swamiji, Professor Bhatt, and the keynote speaker. In the inaugural speech, Dr. Soma Bandyopadhyay, she also made a reference. So this will not be anything unique, that there is a difference between Sanatan Dharma or Yuga Dharma. Dharma, we can understand it as a set of values, because man is a value conscious being. Animals, they don't have dharma in the sense we have. They have got dharma considered as a natural behavior, or the fire has got its own dharma, to say like that. That is not the meaning. The topic, the theme, the relevance of Yuga Dharma. So it is certainly concerned with the human society, concerned with the man, because man is very important. And man is a value conscious being. So naturally, dharma is concerned with the patterns of life and the values of life. So Yuga Dharma. Now, I would like to pose a philosophical question. Being the student of philosophy, I would like to raise a philosophical question: whether this Yuga Dharma is relative. Yuga Dharma is relative. It is context bound. It is conditioned by the culture and the prevailing behavior, customs. So Yuga Dharma is not absolute. It changes. It do changes. Values do change. Values are not like Yuga Dharma. If I take it in the sense of values, it is not like a stone, but it is changing. And during the course of the time, Yuga Dharma, what was the Dharma in Dwapar is not Dharma in Kali Yuga. So it is a relative one. What I mean to say, Yuga Dharma is relative and not absolute. We have got certain values which are not affected by the passage of time. So, truth. Let us take the value of the truth or honesty. Even the entire humanity becomes dishonest. Does it mean that honesty as a value is affected? So there are certain Shashwat Mulya, but most of the values are relative to our culture. What is valuable to Indians may not be so very much valuable to Americans. But there are certain values which are accepted by entire humanity. So I come to the conclusion that Yuga Dharma is not absolute, not eternal, but conditioned, relative. So naturally, when we talk about the Yuga Dharma, we have to talk in the framework of the cosmos. Or I can put it like that. Naturally, Hindu interpretation of the history, because values and the dharmas, they emerge during the course of the history. By history, I do not mean records of facts, but history is the history of the universe. And certainly when we talk about Yuga, so we have to talk about the cyclic conception of the Hindu history. So Indian history is not vertical. Hindu history, interpretation of the history in the framework of Hinduism and in the framework of the Semitic religion or Judaism, so to say. So if we understand history, certainly Hindu history is a cyclic one. So Satyayug, Treta, Dwapar, Kali Yuga, and then again, according to the cycle, Satyug is to emerge. And Professor Bhatt rightly said that Kali Yuga Kali Yuga gives us a chance to be liberated. According to the Hindu mythology, the history has been interpreted in a cyclic way, whereas in Judeo-Christian thought, we find that history, or you can say yuga, history is a vertical one. So man evolves and attains godhood in Semitic religion, but in Hinduism, straightway we do not attain. So it goes horizontal. It is not vertical. So the history can be interpreted in two ways, in a vertical way and in the horizontal way. And Hindu history, or the interpretation of the history, I mean the cosmic process, because this yuga evolves, yuga changes in the cosmic process. So certainly, the destiny of man lies in getting perfection, and most of the speakers, they pointed out. So certainly, this Kali Yuga is a age of disruption, chaos, and the coronavirus has posed a situation of disruption, and naturally, post-corona life of human beings, post-corona age may be a better age, and certainly we wish that we get rid of this coronavirus and get a better life. And with these words, I thank Dr. Gopinath Pillai and most of the persons, Dr. Professor Sebastian and Patel Sahab and Dr. K.P. Shashi Kumar. The names
Thank you.
I see on the screen. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah.
I'm not really competent to speak much about this problem, but whatever I understood, I have expressed. Thank you. Over to Professor Pillai.
Yeah. Thank you, Sinhaji. Thank you very much, Sinhaji. You have another program, we understand, and you have, discourse on practical paradigms of Dharma, Yuga Dharma, and the need of a horizontal, vertical view of this historiography and history making. All these are very insights in this dialogue. And we are so much thankful to Sinhaji. So much thanks. And now we have a Panir Selvanji. I hope the Maharaj will wait a little more. And I invite Professor Panir Selvan to make his presentation. By 12:30 we have to this disperse. Okay. Please, welcome, Panir Selvan.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Namaskar. Most revered and respected Swamiji, our teacher and one of the important philosophers of this country, Professor S.R. Bhatt, my good friend Professor R.C. Sinhaji, Chairman of ICPR, Professor Daveji, and my dear good friend Professor Sebastian Ji, and other esteemed participants and friends. At the outset, I am grateful to Dr. Gopinath Ji for inviting me for this wonderful webinar, which I think is the need of the hour. In fact, I have been closely associated with the Shantagiri Ashram for more than 10 years through my good friend Sebastian G. In fact, initially I said I am not interested in this kind of forums, but Sebastian G invited me and he persuaded me to attend, and from ever since I attended this meet in Shantagiri, I became a disciple of Sri Karnagar Guru because of the valuable and commendable job which they have been doing for the humanity. And the title of my paper is Contextualizing Yuga Dharma in the Phenomenological Experience of Sri Karnagar Guru. What I am trying to argue here is that we can apply the hermeneutic phenomenology, which is very much predominant in the Western tradition, in the context of Sri Karnagar Guru. Because the hermeneutic phenomenology is nothing but interpretive phenomenology, which is very much visible in the context of Karnagar Guru, wherein he interprets the concept of Dharma as well as Yuga Dharma. This means interpretational understanding of Yuga Dharma of our Guru, that is Karnagar Guru, is something which is a phenomenological in character. Now, how do we define phenomenology? And I am always fascinated by a phrase which is given by Professor S.R. Bhatt. Professor Bhatt would talk about what is known as the lived experience. And the best way of defining phenomenology is that it is nothing but the lived experience of the people. When we say lived experience, it is not only about the present, but about the past as well as future. Because in Western phenomenology, we say that past, present, and future are interconnected. So, taking the clue from Professor Bhatt by saying that phenomenology is nothing but the lived experience of a person, one can connect this with our Guru by saying that he is the one who could connect successfully the past, present, and future. Husserl, who is the founder of phenomenology, argues that it is nothing but the re-establishing of the fundamental experience. So the fundamental experience of a person is interpreted in terms of Yuga Dharma. And it is nothing but the uncovering the basic structure of human understanding and existence. So in Karnagar Guru's experience, one can see how he contextualizes Yuga Dharma, which is very much essential. In fact, in any phenomenology, two things are important. One is a dialogue and the other is interpretation. These are the two benchmark for the phenomenological experience. And if you look at the teachings of Karnagar Guru, you see, one can see that most of his teachings are available in the form of a dialogue and interviews. In fact, I would call this as phenomenological interview, because the interviews were a way of reproducing a text. And not only that, it involves a person into a dialogue. In fact, our Guru, Karnagar Guru, has pointed out what is known as a corrective process. A corrective process, he says, is needed to rectify our error and mistakes. So the term corrective process has been used by Karnagar Guru in order to explain that how we have been misguided wrongly by our past. Past means the wrong traditions. I would like to focus on two important works of our Guru. One is a dialogue on the human prospects. This is a very important book. And another important book of our Guru is The Riddle of Manu, Manuvantara, Avatars, and the World Teacher Prophecies. So I would be concentrating on these two important works of our Guru. In fact, the concept of Dharma has been interpreted, reinterpreted by our contemporary as well as classical thinkers. Just now we heard Professor Bhatt giving a beautiful interpretation to the concept of Dharma. Dharma, one can say, constitutes the very essence of all values like goodness, kindness, charity, and duty towards the fellow being. And in fact, in the contemporary period, there are great thinkers like Swami Vivekananda, and in our inaugural address, the Vice Chancellor has very beautifully elaborated this. So in the contemporary period, we come across great thinkers like Swami Vivekananda, Radhakrishnan Sri Aurobindo, and Karnagara Guru, who I would call them as exemplars of interpreting the Yuga Dharma. And while interpreting the Yuga Dharma, it has been pointed out by our Guru that how it has a relevance to our life. So what is needed is how do we interpret Dharma or Yuga Dharma for our present way of life. Here I would like to quote how Dharma is very much essential for our universal society. I would like to quote Professor G.C. Pandey, a well-known cultural anthropologist. I quote him, Dharma not only harmoniously orders individuals within each group, but also orders the group themselves within the larger unity of a universal society based upon the principles of economic or material cooperation. So peaceful coexistence of diverse communities is possible only through the concept of Dharma. In fact, Rabindranath Tagore very beautifully says, Dharma is the innermost nature, the essence, the implicit truth of all things. In fact, the Tamil tradition, especially, it has been pointed out by our Gopinath Pillai, also Thiruvalluvar, the author of the text Tirukkural, very beautifully shows how Dharma, righteousness, what he calls as Aram, is a basis for life. So, taking some clues from our ancient sages and contemporary thinkers, I would like to look at Guru's contribution in the context of Yoga Dharma. It has been pointed out by Guru in his well-known book, which I mentioned just now, a dialogue on the human prospect, shows an interesting dialogue between Guru and disciple on various aspects concerning human life. The main focus of Guru's thought can be explained in the following way. I quote, compassion for all human beings, humans and animals and all other alike, fostering divine virtues, selflessness, generosity, fellow beings, tolerance, and serenity. This is how our Guru presents his notion of Dharma. In fact, all his dialogue, as I said just now, all his teachings are in the form of a dialogue. The relation between a Guru and disciple is so intimate that only a disciple can understand the truths given by Guru. One of the important disciples of Karnagara Guru, that is Rishiratna Jnana Tapaswami, observes, I quote, only a disciple can understand the truths revealed by the Guru. Those who follow other paths may not understand Guru, but after a few generations, Guru's teaching will be inherited by people from every tradition, unquote. This is available in the book, The Riddle of Manu, page 146. A liberated Guru is nothing but an embodiment of Dharma, an embodiment of Brahman. It is through Guru one can understand the world as well as Brahman. In fact, our Guru says, I am not away from you. I exist in all of you as everything. You will get relief from all disease and attain all sorts of peace, abundance, and goodness by your prayers to me, unquote. So Guru is one who gives a guidance to us all the time, and Karnagara Guru's life experience is something which one connect to one's own self. While explaining the importance of Guru, our Karnagara Guru says that in the preceding ages, how the concept of Dharma has been interpreted. He says that in the preceding age, that is before Krishna, the Dharma that was followed was Yuga Dharma. There were lapses, but life went on. I'm quoting him. In this context, he says the nature of Yuga Dharma. Yuga Dharma, according to Guru, is the dharmic code of the Yuga, that is the age. In Chaturyuga, he says, is a quarter of ages consisting of Krita, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali. Now, he says, now the Yuga Dharma should be what pertains to Kalki. From the beginning of this Kalki itself, we fail to discern the transition of the age. This is a very important statement, I think. We fail to discern the transition of the age. What we had to discern was the fluctuations in the human processes in the three past ages. This is how our Guru interprets the Yuga Dharma. In fact, he says how people have been crushed and tyrannized by the rulers. After a long time of suffering, he says, thinking came into force and freedom emerges as an important concept. It took long years, he says, for people to realize that they have even right to learn. I quote, men grew like plants. He says, men grew like plants of the wild, but his mind could not reach out the knowledge. This is from a dialogue on the human prospect, 46. The above point of Guru clearly shows that how humanity has lost its direction, and there is a need to correct it. That's why he talks about the corrective process. This is here, he says, the role of the Guru enters. When society ignores the wise, he says, when the society ignores the wise, then it becomes rotten and unworthy. The great sages and saints of the Vedic and Upanishadic seers have expounded the truth. But since humanity has lost its direction, they were not able to understand the significance of wisdom. The mistake can be rectified by going back to our ancient text and also by following the principles laid down by the great gurus like Karnagara Guru. A guru is quite often defined as a Tirgadarisi. Tirgadarisi, all of us know the meaning, a far-sighted seer who perceives and ordains what is needed and what is not needed for the yuga. This is where you can see the role of interpretation. So who perceives and ordains what is needed and what is needed for the yuga. A guru acts for the transformation of society at a particular point of time. Karnagara Guru, as a synthesizer of tradition and modernity, explains the role of tradition at the same time pointing out the need for modernity. I quote him, let all the world remain in its place. Let us absorb the virtues thereof without destroying it. But that which is evil will indeed be destroyed. This is our spirituality. And I think this is the best way of defining the concept of spirituality. So Karnagara Guru, as a synthesizer of tradition and modernity, wants to retain the tradition, which I think is one of the principles of hermeneutics as well as phenomenology. But at the same time, Guru will not ready to accept what is the orthodoxy. There is always a distinction between orthodoxy and tradition. Orthodoxy is nothing but clinging to the old customs and beliefs. Even though they are not relevant, sometimes we still cling on to that. That is what we call orthodoxy. But our guru is a traditionalist in the things he thinks wherever needed, we can amend or make certain changes in the tradition. So in this way, one can see how in the teaching of our guru, there is a synthesis of tradition and modernity. And Karunagara Guru tries to understand the modernity by showing the relevance of the Yuga Dharma. And he says that there are certain concepts which needs a reinterpretation. For example, he talks about in detail the concept of Manu. He says how the concept of Manu has to be reinterpreted. Karunagara Guru, as a synthesis of spiritualism and secularism, universal love, world peace, and religious harmony, has shown a new vision of peace and harmony, which is very much essential for the world. This message is reflected in identifying Guru with God. This is something very much remarkable, because in tradition, especially Tamil tradition, also we find this identifying Guru with God. This simply means one who realizes the greatness of Guru realizes God. Guru is both a mother and father. The very truth, the method and medium of Shantagiri Ashram is to enable people to teach the goal of oneness of humanity. All the time, our Guru has been stressing this point, oneness of humanity, forgetting caste and religion. So while interpreting the Yuga Dharma, our Guru has used this concept of oneness of humanity, forgetting the caste, color, and creed. And of course, he was very much influenced by our ancient thinkers, especially our Upanishadic thinkers. And one important point which he has elaborately discussed is the corrective process, which I mentioned earlier. The corrective process means that whenever necessary, wherever necessary, he says a text or the concept has to be revisited. I would like to tell here that how he has elaborately discussed the concept of Sanatana Dharma. He shows how people began to distort religious knowledge. A corrective process in this context was attempted by Shankara. He says, our Guru says that a corrective process was attempted by Shankara also by establishing 4 mats to propagate the right religious knowledge. For this purpose, the importance of worship or bhakti was introduced. But our Guru says that Shankara's followers, this is a point, a significant point which has been made by our Guru. He says, Shankara's followers, however, linked this with the old Trimurti system, thus ensuring the ritual and the Brahmin domination once again. This is available in a dialogue on the human prospects, page 49. So violence, further he says, violence and ignorance entered into the temple. This is a very, very significant point. Violence and ignorance entered into the temple. The worship of yakshis and demons become prominent. Such a system can be changed only through an alternative system. The great gurus, the Buddha, Shankara, Narayana Guru, and many others have tried their best to offer an alternative to the system. This is what Guru says. But unfortunately, he says, the earlier tradition tried to defeat the new alternatives. This is a very important point which we have to take into account. He says, unfortunately, the earlier traditions tried to defeat the new alternatives. Hence, a right guru is needed, because it is by the corrective teachings of the guru the mistakes can be rectified. It is said, I quote once again, Guru, the guidance of a preceptor seems to be the only way. A preceptor, a complete guru who has had all the experience of the spiritual realm, unquote. According to the Guru, the teachings of the Guru should influence a disciple in a larger way. So thus, you can see the corrective process which our Guru has suggested is very much essential for the present day world. In another interesting work which I mentioned, of course, the riddle of Manu, he, by quoting Kena Upanishad, says that the blessed are who attain to the supreme wisdom in this very life. If a person does not reach this level, then there is something wrong. So Guru argues that the divine wheel of Dharma has been operating through religious traditions of the world. The humanity has been looking for a divine incarnation so that we can have justice, order, and love among human beings. I complete within 1 minute. Guru has thus emphasized the importance of spiritual transformation. In fact, he has pointed out that in what is needed in Kali Yuga, what is needed in Yuga Dharma is the spiritual transformation. The transformation has taken place in various religious traditions in different ways. In the case of Christians, he says it is through Jesus Christ, and for Islam, it is through Muhammad, and for Buddhists, through Lord Buddha, and for the Hindus, through the Kalki avatar. What is important is at present is a spiritual transformation and the spiritual awareness. Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says, when Dharma declines, the incarnation of the divine will take place. Keeping this at a backdrop, our Guru says, rightly says, and I quote, scriptures have mentioned that deities earn spiritual elevation and deserving souls salvation during the epoch of an avatar, unquote. The superhuman souls, according to him, influence the spiritual evolution of human society. Like Sri Aurobindo, our Guru says that the human evolution is cyclical in nature and which happens at every age. If human beings are not spiritually conscious, then there will be disorder, disquiet, and calamity. Civilizations have emerged one after other, but what is needed is the peace of mind for the individual as well as the society. So I conclude by saying that it is a need of the hour to practice the philosophy of Sri Karnagara Guru, who has given a new direction for the human society. In fact, all his teachings have to be interpreted and reinterpreted in the phenomenological framework so that one can see the relevance of his teaching all the time. So with this few words, I close and I take the opportunity to thank Professor Gopinath and other eminent thinkers and scholars who were kind enough to listen to my talk. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
So thank you, Professor Pannirselvam. And being a disciple of Navajyoti Sri Karunagaru, I have to extend my thanks, our thanks, because it is great that you have imbibed the spirit, underpinnings of Guru's teaching in such a way that you could, in a very, not only logical, touching the person, certain fundamental aspects of Guru, so as to shed some light into the spiritual intricacies, philosophical intricacies, and the need of a change of time, etc. And in future we will have more discourses. Thank you, Professor Pannirselvam.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it is a high time that let me invite Jagat Guru Dilip Ji Maharaja to make a brief presentation. He is the Secretary, UN Committee of Religious NGOs, Vice President at UNSRC, Science Wellness Network, New York, UNO Escortates, etc. And in various capacities for the last 21 years, he has been rendering service. He has been working hardly to promote this Indian and spirituality, especially through yoga. So he is quite known in New York and other parts of USA as a person who promote Indian values and culture and is a very known yoga, not only yoga practitioner, it's a higher levels of yoga and its possibilities for promoting human health, different dimensions of health. He's very known and he's hardworking in that country. And let me invite him to make a brief presentation. Thank you for making you sit all this night at the US. Not to thank, apologizing you. We apologize you to make you sit all this night. Please welcome Dilip Ji Maharaj to me. Yeah. Yeah.
Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear?
Yeah.
Satchidananda Guru Satchidananda Om Guru Jaya Guru Satchidananda Om Guru Jaya Guru Satchidananda Satchidananda Guru Satchidananda Satchidananda Guru Satchidananda. Namaste everyone. It's 2 a.m. in New York City and -3 degree cold, but I'm so happy and it's my great pleasure to join with you. It's my honor. I listened to our Vice Chancellor in the last part and Swamiji and Simhaji, Bhaji. I always think about him, the way he spoke as a young divine being. And the point from Selvam-ji about Guru. I met Karuna Guru so many times. I used to travel around in India to see what is the Indian culture is. Somehow I understood my uncle, Guru Nitya and Karuna Guru were close friends. My background is my father's side is an Orthodox Christian and mother's side is a Hindu. I became a yoga master and train around the world, move around, and brought Yoga Day, International Day of Yoga. That was my project. We gave to the government of India. Then it became the international movement. From last 21 years, we do hard work in US to promote Hinduism as it is. When I listened to Professor Bhaji, I had to acknowledge the way he said, Hinduism is not a religion, it's a way of life. I absolutely agree with that one because a lot of time we waste our time for the politics. Our duty to learn and practice and teach. Otherwise, it cannot survive. When Professor Billaji talked to me yesterday, I was really honored to be part of this event. The work he's doing for so many decades with the Guru and the Shantigiri Ashram. Yeah. This is a real dedication. We talk about the Hinduism, Yuga Dharma. These are the philosophies. Wonderful to hear it. And we cannot change everything at a time. So a long process. It's a journey. This is my personal life experience. It's a journey. When I came to New York, I had a great opportunity to spend time with the Swami Buaji Maharaj. He is from Kerala. He lived 123 years. He's a prominent Hindu leader at the UN. When I left America, I don't want to live in New York. I went back to Kerala and he asked me to come back and continue his work. So I didn't understand why he said that. Later I understood. Other religious people cannot acknowledge the value of Hinduism. They want to step on us and destroy the culture. So I took it as a challenge. Because maybe somebody is betraying Hinduism from our culture too. So we had to stand up. And when I look at around the world, last 35 years I'm putting interfaith programs at the UN and outside the UN and travel around the world. There is no other religion equal to Hindu religion. even though I won't say religion as a way of life, when you look at the history of the Hinduism, people say all the scriptures written in Sanskrit, this and this, fine. But beyond religion or the culture or the language, there's something exists in the universe. That's a part we all are in the union, so oneness. So that very clearly say, actually the core of the Hinduism is a universal spirituality than anything else. We may develop the current Hinduism because of the Shankaracharya. He traveled all over India, compel all the teachings. But everything started from the indigenous traditions. And the great masters, yogis or rishis who were contributed. And there's an evolution process also happening. Something we have to update in the Hinduism too. We may see some wrong practices not fit for the community. So we have to update the outdated teachings. I won't say everything wrong. So all depend upon each person's needs. That's the way it is. Like in homeopathy, they have the chronic treatment and the acute treatment. So we never know when we need each philosophy. So we don't have to eliminate everything, but we have to look what is good for the people. This is, we say this is a Kali Yuga. So how we can overcome, or how we can help our people to get out from this karmic issue. We have so much rituals. Are they everything good for people? We have so many mantras. Are they helping people? So we have so many institutions doing research on this part. It end up in talking. So practical level is very low. That's the thing I noticed that. So when you practice yoga, we have to practice. We cannot escape from real practice. So I just move around, interact with people, update myself, more than imposing somebody to learn things. My master, Swami Buaji, always say, begin the day with love, spend the day with love, fill the day with love, end the day with love. That's the way to go. He's a Hindu master saying about the love, unconditional love. When we have that unconditional love, developing in our nature, absolutely we'll reach the absolute state of mind or the bliss. So should we practice that? When we get the absolute state of bliss, definitely all the philosophy will go in the back. That's a state Karnaguri is talking about. That's the thing I understood. The way he expressed in his teaching, very hard to understand for people, regular people. So we have to simplify to people with experience as in our life. If teachers are not practicing and behaving properly, it's very hard for them to accept it. So the guide should practice, teach, preach, and make them to develop. Most of the time you go to even school or college, became an expert in one subject, then we write the exam, we pass the exam, then we leave. But when we start teaching, that's the time we really develop. So I took this lifestyle as my challenge and face every difficult situation as a blessing. That's why I take it, my personal experience. Then I learn from others. A lot of time we say Indian culture is the most best. Not always. We have really high rank of spirituality we have. We have a lot of knowledge. Nobody can beat that one. I agree with that one. But sometimes we have so much dogma. We have to eliminate that. When you look at a diamond, We destroy a land, take a big chunk of diamond, raw diamond, and then cut it and polish it. Then it will become a beautiful, expensive diamond. Then one day we lose that diamond. See that feeling. We all think about spirituality, but when crisis is happening, we forget about all of this stuff. That's the way our life it is. So we had to balance every single moment. It is very, very hard to practice. I was talking to Professor Pillai yesterday. I said, I eat only 1 meal a day. I sleep sometimes, not sleep sometimes. But be with people and be in silence in the night time, work, and my phone is on 24/7. A lot of time people are saying, why are you doing like this? I said, I want to take a challenge. I want to learn something new. And I want to see how I can balance myself. It's very hard to live in this style in New York because his lifestyle is different here. In India and Himalayas, when I was living in Himalayas, it's totally different. But I enjoy because I feel somehow I can connect other people and create a satsang group. Satsang means this is a satsang, even though we say seminar. When you look at the intellectual way of expressions came from each person's real spiritual satsang, I felt it. That's why I just sitting, I want to listen more than a speaker. Because this is the way I grew up. You know, I remember the last days in December, Guru Nitya Nedi used to make discourses. People come from different parts of India and they all stay and they all discuss. Sometimes he'll ask people to do a puja and they'd never done before. So priest will get upset. Why is asking a person who don't know the puja? So he'll teach them how to do things. So this type of mindset, we had to get out from the mindset and go to the deeper sense of the spirituality. Most of the time, for people, it's very hard because they get scared. So they are happy, go to the temple, pray to the God and leave, or do some pujas and leave, or ask some priests to do puja for them, they leave. But when you go deeper and deeper, we get more trouble in our life. When we get more troubles, when we face it with 100% balanced mind, you are the best one. You overcome all the troubles. When you try to tune with the force of the universe, everything will happen in order. That's the thing. This is my personal experience I'm talking about. We have so many scriptures. I had to acknowledge all our beautiful teachings. Great masters came from different cultures in different time. All are great. But water is water. H2O is the water. If we put any other particles in it, that is a liquid. Do we need liquid or do we need the water which can cleanse our entire body and the mind? Water is the one we have to need for our cleansing and for the life. So we have to go to the universal spirituality more than anything else. I'm so glad Professor Gopinathan Pillai is continuously putting this program, bringing people from different traditions, different masters, and from different countries. This is the world needed this way. I was proposing one idea to the UN spiritual group because we need a universal think tank, like a philosophy everybody can practice. A system, medical system, everybody can practice. Even Corona time, people are arguing each other. In India, we propose Ayurveda, Homeo, and all the stuff, but somehow some people don't want to promote that too. So we had to change that system because we have so much great medicines in India. Definitely, we had to stand for the truth. We had to uplift our culture in the real sense more than politics. With everybody's love, I want to conclude here with two lines. प्रेम ईश्वर है, ईश्वर प्रेम है, प्रेम ईश्वर है, ईश्वर प्रेम है. La 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 la, la la la. Thank you, everyone.
So, Dilipji Maharaj, I don't know how to extend our thanks because as Professor Shelvam sir quoted Batsa's words, you shared with us your lived experiences. It was so soothing to listen to you and so enchanting. Such a, without quoting high-sounded philosophical words or phrases, you have made us to think deeply, because it is our first meeting. Though you have visited ashram, first time we are meeting. That happened. But I never knew that you had such a vast experience of life, lived experiences. And I hope that in future you will share, you will be with us in our strivings, and we will share our ideas to promote human love, brotherhood, which is vanishing everywhere. And we all pray for your well-being and for your karma in US to a true Indian way of life, worldview, and culture. Thank you very much, Dilip Maharaj.
You are welcome. It's my pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Yeah. So much thanks. So with this, we are concluding. Invite Shashumar. Shashumar is familiar to all of us, and please extend a word of thanks to all beloved participants.
Namaskaram. I guess after every speaker, my elder brother Gopinath ji thanked everybody and concluded with nice words. I don't think there is any formal vote of thanks required, because we are all one family. But still, I have got 5 minutes given. I don't know what to do, but still I will like to share a few ideas. I remember my guru telling once, Kalau kartayugam karma sada ayakkartumischadi swamidrohi idam matva idaram badade kali. Those who want to get respect, they may not get respect. Those who may not have to get respect, they may get. The popularity goes by marketing today. I am so glad that today His Highness Dilip Kumar ji is with me, because two disciples, Shaukat and Joseph, both of them stayed with me when I was director for Academic Staff College in Calicut, who wrote Yaticharitam. They are very close to me, though I couldn't had an opportunity to meet Yati directly. I think probably in most of my spiritual lectures, I don't give religious lectures. All my spiritual lectures, one person whom I quote is Yati. I've got my virtual satsang the last day. 3 days back I was quoting Yati, because we learn a lot of things from such people. The contemporary people like Swami Vivekananda, Aravindo, Karunagara Guru, probably all of them share the same spirit, but we have compartmentalized all of them. And then that is where we call somebody as classical and non-classical and all that. I think there could be a lot of criticism for Shankaracharya for what he has not done, or probably what he has done in few pockets. Buddha may have something else to credit. These are all part. I remember I am in Hyderabad now, so I am more a Hyderabadi for last 30 years, 35 years. I remember Appaya Dikshitar. He said once, Rupam Rupa Vivarjidasya Bhavado Dhyayena Yat Kalpitam Stutya Nirvajaniyada Gilaguru Dhuli Krita Yenmaya Vyaptitvam Chamaya Krita, etc. etc. Doshatrayam Matkritam. Where we lost is the Anushtana has been replaced by Acharyas with some Acharam which they followed and they thought that is right. So we lost the core content. So Satya Treta, Dwapara, Kali Yuga. We know it is fourfold, threefold, twofold, and onefold of the Kali Yuga, which makes 728,000 and 1,296,000 and 864,000 and Kali Yuga 432,000 years. From the nature concept in the Treta Yuga, Satya Yuga, it came to societal concept. So if you look at Ramayana, societal concept is more given importance. When it came to Dwapara, it happens to be family concept. Now today, it is all self-concept. It's all conflict within us. Each individual have got into self and they have confusion. That is why probably, I'm sure most of the speakers shared the same concept of saying we have got a Papa Punya. I remember Sinhaji mentioning, it goes from the ratio from Papa, the Punya to Papa from 10 to 0. 10 is to 0. In the Satya Yuga became 8 is to 2 in the Treta Yuga. Probably 5 is to 5 in the Dwapara Yuga, and today it is 2 is to 8. And that is why we are able to have this satsang, because there are few people still thinking about not the classical temporary concept but the future concept. So we have a great responsibility, and I'm sure with the initiative, my elder brother was kind enough to put me here and there to look at faces, and I was looking for, yesterday also I was asking where is my Dilip ji's face is not seen. I want to put that in the flyer. So I'm so glad that I could meet such great personalities. Pani Sharvamji has thoroughly studied Karnagara Guruji and then mentioned, as usual, Bhattji is with us, and we are going to listen much more stalwarts like Deveji and all us. We were all together in many places, so I know many faces who all work very, very, very much to leave something for the future. So I'm going to, I recorded all this, so it's going to be on YouTube. The organizers have done a great job. I'm sure ICPR is supporting it a great extent. So my job should be to thank, because he cannot thank himself, right? So I have given a responsibility to thank Gopinathji and then also to ICPR. And I'm sure more than speakers, the other people who listened carefully. I lost connection in between sometime, but again I came back. So I'm sure, though we are late by 1 hour, we all had the patience of listening, because there is a great value added to this. I'm sure the YouTube is going to get extended. I'm going to share it. Minimum one day it will have more than 300, 400 people. That's my subscribers list is almost 5K now. So I'm going to do that. So glad that this opportunity for meeting great personalities. I was there in US last 2 years and I finished teaching my Bhagavad Gita sessions there. It was so interesting that the Western world is looking for knowledge to India, and we have got great things to supply to the future world. So namaskaram and pranams to each one of you. Thank you for giving this opportunity, and then I'm sure we are going to have next 2 days great lot of wisdom to share, and that is what we should all make this happen. So thanks a lot. Thank all of you. Thank you. That's enough. Good enough. I think it's almost one.
Thank you, Shashimar sir. It is very late. And as you said, thank you to all for patient listening.